What is up, guys? Welcome to patch 1.13.1.3 tier list. We have Metagross released. Meowscarada has been in the game for a while. So exciting stuff. Gyarados is coming. Will come soon. Merry Christmas and Happy New Year's to everyone who just celebrated that. And yeah, let's hop into it. This is the full tier list. So I've been doing EX on my last few tier lists, but you can see here that I'm no longer doing that. Because the EX mons aren't the best mons in the game technically, although Zacian and Mewtwo Y are, but Mewtwo X isn't, so I decided to stop doing it. Zacian, best Pokemon in the game by far, no question there. Mewtwo Y, best attacker in the game. So in competitive, we have top lane, support, jungle, defender, and attacker. So two play top, two play bottom, the defender, attacker, bot. The top laner, support top, and we have a jungler. So that's how competitive works. This is a competitive tier list. So Mewtwo Y's best role is actually as an attacker, not a jungler, in my opinion. And it's actually the best attacker now. It's better than Intel, better than A9, which you can see are pretty high up here. Mew is all the way down there. We'll get to it. But Umbreon is the best defender. Zacian is the best top laner. And Mewtwo X is a little different because you can play it in top lane. You can play it as jungle. In general, it's probably better as a jungler right now. And Mewtwo X is a little bit of a this could be among top players. Some top players think it's not good, some top players think it's really good, so it's a bit debatable that it's this high up. The reason I have Mewtwo X this high up is because jungle doesn't have that many good picks right now. You can see if we scroll down the list, Intel could be played as a jungler if you want to flex it there. You have Glaceon, Leafeon, Dodrio, Dragapult. So these are good options, but they're not like, they don't scream like, oh, you need to play this mon. So Mewtwo X is a great jungler right now, just because there's not that many overpowering jungle picks. So that's why I think Mewtwo X is gonna be up here. If other jungle picks get buffed and you really need to pick them, I think Mewtwo X will fall down. Now Blastoise is the best mon after those four. And the reason Blastoise is so strong and competitive is because it's a flex pick. What is a flex pick? You can play it in two different roles, and it's really good in two different roles. Flex picks are going to be really strong and competitive, and if a Pokemon can flex, it's going to be just better in competitive because during draft phase, it gives you a lot more flexibility in draft phase, which is coming to ranked. So this is important for people who play ranked too, because that draft is coming to ranked in February. So Zacian is a flex pick. You can play it top lane jungle. Mewtwo Y, you can play it attacker jungle. So Blastoise is the same, and that's why it's so strong. Both its movesets are good, and they're good into different themes. So there's really nothing that Blastoise is bad into, which makes it really, really good. Its laning phase is now really good as well, with just how the meta has shifted. Intel got a nerf, but I still think it's the best attacker after Mewtwo Y. And again, Intel is a great flex pick because you can play it as attacker, you can play it as a jungler. So those flex picks are always going to be higher up than just normal picks. Now A9 is actually really, really high up here. I think A9, the biggest thing with A9 is that both its movesets are now good. And I didn't realize how big of an impact this would have on A9 in the game, because you can play A-Veil now into comps that you need to run A-Veil, have that dash. And you can still play the Blizzard build, which is good into certain comps. So now that flexibility makes A9 really, really good. You can only really play it as attacker, but you can play as jungler if you really, really need. However, I don't recommend that. Now Slowbro, just standard defender. It got nerfed, but it's still really good just because there's not other defender picks that are better. There's some situations you might want to play Trevenant, but Slowbro just really solid overall. They didn't nerf its Unite, and its Unite is the most broken part about Slowbro. There's no other Pokemon that does it as good as Slowbro with the Unite. Now Buzzwole, I actually have really high up here, and Buzzwole is just the best top laner after Zacian, and it just dominates every top lane. It should win every lane if you have a good support with you. Obviously Hoopa might change that, but in a 1v1 situation, Buzzwole is the best. And so that's why Buzzwole is so high up here, because it's just really good in the laning phase. Not only that, After laning phase, it's just really good. That perma CC, you want to go smackdown superpower, is really useful at a top level. Just imagine you're playing against Overlord and you're wondering how you can beat him. Well, you play Buzzwole and you perma CC him. He's gonna be stunned for like 10 seconds, no counterplay available for him. Not 10 seconds, like 5 seconds, no counterplay at all. He's just gonna be stunned if he doesn't have full heal, which some mons he plays he won't have full heal, and you just will kill him. So that's why Buzzwole is super useful, because you can really kill any Pokemon in the game with Buzzwole, and he can really carry team fights as well. Now Dodrio is the next best. I am a big fan of Dodrio in this meta. I think the new item, the Charging Charm on Dodrio, is insanely good. Both movesets are good right now. Both movesets are really good. So I'm a big fan of Dodrio, and I think it's really good. Another thing about Dodrio is it's a great flex pick. You can play it in top lane, you can play it in jungle, you can even play it attacker if you really need. It's not that bad as attacker. So I have Trevenant way higher up than my previous tier list, and let me tell you my thought process with this. Tree just feels really strong. So even though Umbreon and Slowbro are going to be better picks 99% of the time, that doesn't change how strong Trevenant is into all these Pokemon. I think Tree is really annoying for all the top meta Pokemon to face right now. Why is that? Because all of these Pokemon do not want to run a curse item. The only Pokemon is maybe A9, but A9 is still gonna struggle. So if you can't run a curse item, you don't have that healing reduction, then you can't really kill a Trevenant. And none of these Pokemon can really afford to run that in top of the meta. Like they're gonna want to run other items to be better, because if you run a curse item, you're basically only 2 items, except you get that healing reduction, of course. So that's why I think Trevenant is so strong right now. It's just unkillable into a lot of comps. Will that change in competitive where you can actually see their Pokemon? Maybe, but like there's some comps you see they have a Trevenant, but you still don't want to go that curse healing item just for that one Pokemon. So I think Tree is just really, really strong overall. Of course, it has that insane CC, it has that insane survivability. So Glaceon is another Pokemon that I have really high up. I'm just a big fan of Glaceon because both its movesets are good, and it does a really good amount of damage. It's really good into a lot of the top meta Pokemon right now. Its passive is really useful against Buzzwole, against the Mewtwo's. Even against Zacian, it's pretty good because it can just kite it. So Leafeon is the next best. I think Charging Charm is really good on Leafeon, so it kind of boosted its viability. Otherwise, it'd probably be below Zoroark without this new item. And Leafeon just, it's like Slowbro, where it has a niche that it does really well, right? You just run around the map, you unite someone, you go farm, and you try to one-shot someone that's squishy, and that's always going to be useful at a competitive level. Now Zoro's down here. Again, Zoro I think is good still, but it's a counter pick now. You can't pick it every draft, and there's only certain comps it's good into. However, those comps it's good into, it will absolutely demolish. So it's really just a counter pick, which is why it's at the bottom of S tier here. Now Hoopa has fallen to A tier. Yes, Hoopa has fallen to A tier. The reason for this is because the other support picks are almost as good as Hoopa. So the problem when that happens is in draft, right? Say you get like first pick, you're gonna want to pick Zacian as a first pick instead of Hoopa, right? And it's not just that. Your first 2 picks, do you really want to pick Hoopa, or do you want to pick Inteleon Mewtwo, or like Intel Buzzwole, and other picks like Intel Umbreon, right? So you don't want to prio pick Hoopa because these other support picks are just as good. Say you first pick Hoopa, now the enemy team's gonna get like Intel Umbreon, or like Buzzwole Umbreon, Blastoise Buzzwole, something like that, and you're just gonna get fucked because they'll just get another support Pokemon that's almost as good as Hoopa. So it's just really not worth it now in draft. Dragapult is a really good jungle pick option, but you've seen it fall into A tier. I think I overrated Dragapult a little bit on my last tier list. It's really good now, and I'm really glad it's in the state because Dragapult was really bad for a long time. However, it's not overpowered. I think these top meta Pokemon are still better than Dragapult, but it's good. We have an ADC other than Mewtwo Y that's good. I think it's good for the game, but it's just not that strong. Now the other support Pokemon, you can see all 4 support Pokemon are here, and they are ordered on how good I think they are. I had Clef as the second best support. However, I do think the meta is shifting more towards early game again, and Clef is really bad early game. So there's only certain comps you can run Clef with. You need to make sure your top lane matchup is good. Otherwise, if your top lane matchup is bad, you cannot run Clef. And that really limits Clef in draft. In ranked, I think Clef is fine. It's probably the best support in ranked. However, in draft, I think there's just certain comps you can't run it with, which hurts its viability as a support. Because all these other support Pokemon besides Comfey, you can really run with any comp. But these are all good. They're all like pretty much the same level, which is why all four are lined up here together. Now, Meowscarada. A lot of people think Meowscarada is ass, which I don't see how they could think that, because I just think it's actually really, really good. And yes, it's really squishy, but its passive is what makes it really good. Its passive gives it invincibility. And like, just think about it, in Raid Fight, no matter what they do, unless they sober unite you, if they try to hit you down, say a Buzzwole's trying to CC chain you, it's gonna proc your passive. As soon as your passive procs, you unite move them. If they were trying to kill you, you hit like a 4-man unite, and you heal back all your HP, because your passive procs at 50% HP. When your passive procs, it gives you 20% like blood vamp. I forgot what it's called in Unite, but basically when you deal damage, you heal, and you do that, you use your Unite, you're gonna have that shield, you're gonna heal, and you're gonna be back to full health and just wipe the enemy team. So because its passive is so good, I think both its movesets are good as well. So you can run different movesets into certain themes, and the execute is insane. It has insane secure. It has pretty good early game, not the best early game, but mid game it's already really good. So I think Meowscarada actually is really decent. It just has a high skill cap, so people are struggling to realize how good it is. However, I think you'll see Overlord play this Pokemon a lot during the season. Now, Venusaur didn't get any changes. Still a solid pick. There's just better picks, I think, now. But the problem with Solar Beam and Pillow Dance is that they're more late game focused. They're not that good early game. They're decent, but they're not that good. And I think it's like the meta is really falling towards early game, because the issue is that it's like these late game Scalemons are just like way better late game than sure, they're viable. However, these early game Pokemon that are really good early game, most of these meta Pokemon up here in S+ tier, S tier, they're really good early game, but they're still good late game. There's some Pokemon that are just even better than Venusaur late game, which is the issue. So why not just pick that Pokemon that's better early game, better late game, or just almost as good late game? Now Mew has really fallen off. You can see here. I just think Mew did a niche really well, which was that it did everything. I guess I shouldn't call that a niche, but it just did everything you'd want out of an attacker. However, I just think with the Solar Beam nerfs, Mew no longer does that. Mew is no longer a Pokemon. Before, you go Solar Beam with like a Decidueye and you have double poke, and that was a really strong genre of a team comp. But now I don't think Solar Beam does enough, so you can't really go that. It's not that viable. And yes, it's still versatile in its kit, but that really hurts its viability, that Solar Beam is not that good. So it's no longer a Pokemon, it's more of a mid-range Pokemon, because Electro Ball is still really good. But yeah, it's more of a mid-range Pokemon now. Now Lapras didn't get any changes. Still like a solid, really good Pokemon. It's an A tier. I just think there's better picks, but it's not bad. I think after Blastoise and Buzzwole, Lapras is the next top laner. Just like you can see, like, well, okay, Dodrio too, but Dodrio is most likely jungle most of the time. Leafeon's a better top laner too, but after those Pokemon, Lapras is next. So now we have Mimikyu and Blaziken. So these are two Pokemon. They kind of are unique, where they have this niche of what they do, but it's like this kind of niche where like Mimikyu gets resets off long range snipes. Blaziken just doesn't have a unite move, and it's kind of like a brawler. Blaziken is strongest when everyone's already used their unite moves, right? So these kind of Pokemon are just better in solo queue, and they just have to be really good to be like good in the meta. I'm not saying you won't see them picked, but just like they're not they're not equipped for competitive. Like their move sets are, their kits are either they're really good in competitive or they're not viable at all in competitive. They either had to be like top 5 Pokemon or not that good. So I think as the year goes on, if they stay in the same state, you'll see teams pick these Pokemon less and less. I think Mimikyu is more viable than Blaziken, but I think Mimikyu has a really high skill cap. So if you've mastered Mimikyu, it could be up here above Meowscarada. However, the high skill cap, is it worth learning? I think there's just other Pokemon you can play, and like you don't even have to learn Mimikyu as a jungler. So that's where I think it hurts, because it's like how like big the skill level is. You need to have like hundreds of games, if not 1,000 game on Mimikyu to actually play it perfectly, in my opinion. So is that worth it? I don't think it is, because I think there's just other jungle picks you can play. Blaziken is like the same thing, but for like top lane, because there's just better picks than Blaziken. Like me personally, I've been playing top lane, and I haven't had to learn Blaziken at all, and I've won like 3 tournaments. With like I've played Blaziken like once maybe. So you really don't need to know Blaziken at all, and you'll be fine. No, Delphox, Espeon, Shandy, these are all 3 attackers that I think are really good. They do certain things, like Espeon's really good early game, just decent damage overall. Delphox is really good if you need a tank killer. And Chandelier just does really good DPS, and it's a long range, sort of, like it's almost long range. So, and it has really good survivability. So I think Chandelier is really underrated. It's really good in this meta too, against the top meta Pokemon. Gudra and Crustle. These are 2 tanks that are like really, they're almost really good. They're just overshadowed by other picks. Like I just think Lapras is still better than Gudra. Blastoise is still better than Gudra. Especially in competitive, maybe in ranked, Gudra could be a little better. Crustle does have a niche with its wall. Its wall is really good paired with Poke, but Poke has recently gotten nerfed. So it actually could have had the potential to be like one of the top defenders when like Mew Solar Beam was still good and all that jazz. But they've been nerfing Poke a bit, and I think that's hurt Crustle's viability a little bit. However, I think Crustle is just really good paired with those Poke comps, so you'll still see it picked then, and that's why I have it above Snorlax. Actually, in previous tier lists, I had Snorlax above, so I've conceded that Crustle has a niche that's better than Snorlax. A lot of the times you're not going to pick Snorlax over Trevenant, really. You only pick Snorlax for the early game, but these attackers are starting to really not need that, because all these attackers like Intel, Mew, Espeon don't need a strong early game Pokemon. Now, Red Urshifu's up here. I have been historically a Red Urshifu hater, but I think what we're seeing is like they've been nerfing a lot of the top Pokemon. And what happens when they nerf the top Pokemon is it makes other Pokemon viable even if they don't buff it. Because these Pokemon were like overpowered by other Pokemon, and now they're not. So I think Red Urshi's a prime example of it. Before, he just didn't have enough damage to compete, but now with like the nerfs to top Pokemon, he can actually kill them. So I think he's a little more viable, but you can see here he's at the bottom B tier. Still not a fan, but he's not that bad. Now, Pikachu is really solid, and I actually had it up in like B tier, A tier in my previous tier list. I just think these other attackers do more than it. The issue with Pikachu is that it has a really good like mid game, like early mid game, but that's it. Late game it falls off, early game it's not that good. So it's kind of a weird niche that it just doesn't really matter much for the game. So you might as well pick a different attacker that's better at a different part of the game. Now, Dragonite's really popular in Asia right now. In Asia Cup, I think we're gonna see a lot of Dragonite. I can see why, because you pick Dragonite, you flip objectives, and other teams that they're not prepared, you'll just win. And I think a lot of Asian teams realize this, but we had like Dragonite meta for so long that a lot of NA teams just don't want to play Dragonite. So I think you see just a shared hatred of Dragonite, and that's why NA teams won't play Dragonite. It's not that it's not good, and I think Europe is the same. It's that like Dragonite could work, we just don't want to play the game that way, because we believe if you play perfectly, you can beat these like flip comps. And we've just played against it so much that all the top teams just don't want to play the D9 meta. So I think that's what you're seeing there, a shared hatred of this Pokemon. Now Scyther, Lucario didn't receive any changes, really good. Talonflame, these three are all kind of in the same boat, where like they do certain things well. They're not bad. Like you'll win in ranked with them. In competitive, they have their uses. You'll see them picked once in a while, but you'll only see them picked once in a while. Cram is actually the same. Now Metagross, so this is the big boy. You can see it's all the way in the middle of C tier, which is not that bad. A lot of these Pokemon you're still gonna see picked in competitive a lot. We have a lot of Pokemon in the game now. So in draft, like I think you had the potential to see Metagross picked. It's not that bad. I've actually figured out builds with Metagross. I recommend going Meteor Mash, Magnet Rise, and I go like double stacking like Muscle Band. And once you get 6 stacks, you can actually like you can spar with like the top meta Pokemon. However, it's just not worth getting that 6 stacks. You're still not going to carry a game even if you get 6 stacks. It needs like 6 stacks to be viable as a top Pokemon, as opposed to Blaziken. So Blaziken is just like a better version, because with Blaziken, if you get 6 stacks, you're literally better than every other Pokemon. It's just the sacrifice of getting 6 stacks in a lot of competitive games is not worth it. Metagross is different. Metagross needs 6 stacks to get like up here to like A tier or S tier. So it's not like Blaziken, where like Blaziken is the best Pokemon if it gets 6 stacks. So that's the issue with Metagross. I think it gets kited too easily. It doesn't have, the biggest issue is it doesn't have an unstoppable, and that's really bad in competitive. That's really, really bad, because it's going to be forced to run full heal into certain comps, and it's just terrible. It doesn't have an unstoppable, even a hindrance resistance, and it would have been way better with just a hindrance resistance. But yeah, so Mime received a buff, and I actually think Mime is really good and underrated. I think as the year goes on, we'll see some Mime mains pull it out and win a lot of games. I think Mime has a really high skill cap. It's been out of the meta for a while, so we're not seeing it win that much, but I actually think Mime's in a really good state now, and we'll start to see it more. Wiggly, just solid overall. I think the new Radiant Guard, I think it's called, item made Wiggly really good. So Wiggly used to be rated like F tier on my tier list, and now it's viable. Wiggly was very much a Pokemon where I just didn't think it had a good third item, but now it really does. So Garchomp, Garchomp's like fallen off in terms of viability, but still like solid. It's still C tier, but I just don't think it's that good compared to other top laners. It's still decent. Gardevoir is the same. I just think Gardevoir's fallen off at this point. There's better options like Chandelier and Delphox. Absol's okay, but again, there's just better options. Mamo and Sylveon. So I actually had Sylveon below here. I think I rated Sylveon a little too lowly. Yes, it's getting like bad where it really needs a buff, but I don't think it's that bad. I do think it's better than most of these Pokemon. So after playing in the meta more, so Sylveon's up here, still not the best, but it's not as bad as like 3rd worst in the game. And all these Pokemon are pretty much always rated this low on my tier list, so I'm not going to go too in depth about it, other than the fact that I think Blue Urshifu is officially like, you might see on my next tier list, it's going to be like the worst Pokemon in the game. That's how bad like this moveset is now. Like they really killed it. So you can see it's the 2nd worst, but I'm just like, it's a running joke. I'm putting Zera in last place now because all the Zera mains get so tilted in my comment section. I do think Zera is genuinely really bad, but I'm gonna keep putting it last because it's really funny. Is it the worst Pokemon in the game? I think between Blue Urshifu, Zera, Tyranitar, even like Cinderace, Serena, it's debatable which Pokemon is the worst in the game. I personally think it's Zera, just because like Zera takes a high amount of skill, and it takes too much skill, and it's so shit. So like, yes, if you master Zera, which takes thousands of games, then it's not that bad. But it's not worth it for like, if a new player is looking at Pokemon Unite, I would not recommend playing Zera because of that fact. So hope you guys enjoyed the video. It's been a while, so I am planning to release content, like a lot of content in the new year. I mentioned that in my last video, but that video didn't get a lot of support. So If you guys can, go to my last video, best of LG Slash. I put a lot of effort into that one, and it really mean a lot. Like, subscribe, all that jazz, and I'll catch you in the next video.